Hello, welcome to Lysogene's Reviews, and this is my review for Star Trek Lower Decks, Season 3, Episode 10, the Season 3 finale, The Stars at Night. I'm about to get full steam ahead and spoilers if you have not seen up through the end of this episode. Quite frankly, that should go without saying. In this day and age, you shouldn't watch any reviews on YouTube unless it specifically says spoiler free if you haven't bothered watching the episode yet. But anyways, I digress. Let's dive into it. So definitely had to process this a little bit because it is a different kind of episode than what we normally get from Lower Decks. It's not focusing on the comedy. I mean, it drops in some jokes here and there, but that's not the point of this episode. It's not really trying to be funny. It is more about the characters and the story continued from last week, and it's more about the California class. It's more of a straight up, like, serious Star Trek episode, or about as much of a straight up Star Trek episode that Lower Decks is willing to do. And now one might say that, well, they're focusing too much on the bridge crew when the show is called Lower Decks. I would say that part of the Lower Decks concept actually does include the fact that the California class and the Cerritos specifically are the lower decks of Starfleet. In the past, we've always followed the flagship of Starfleet, or a very important station that is really crucial to this passageway to the Gamma Quadrant and is the center of this big war that happens. Or Voyager, it got lost in space, but even without that, it was touted as like the next big thing, and Starfleet ships. It was the next big class of starship, so it was a pretty important thing too. Whereas the California class just kind of gets shat upon and is just sort of the lower decks of Starfleet. And so looking at it that way, I still think it fits. Now, overall, I do think that most of the episodes should and do focus on our actual literal Lower Decks characters, the Boimlers, Mariners of it all. But I think having an episode about how the California class is the Lower Decks of Starfleet actually does work for me. So in the end, I actually come out pretty positive on this episode. We wrap up a lot of storylines. We do a lot in this episode. That's actually the main thing I had to process is did they do too much? Did any of it feel rushed? And in the end, I end up feeling satisfied with all of it. The one hanging storyline I think is whatever happened to the Bold Boimler thing. I don't know. I mean, I guess that was kind of wrapped up in episode 8. Episode 8 was sort of the Boimler episode. So but you couldn't fit everything in here. And all the things that I thought that I wanted to see and didn't think I would get to, there was 3 of them, and I said at least 2 of them will probably be held off for next season. They actually hit on 2 of the 3. And the one that's held off to next season is the Boimler thing. The fact that Bradford Boimler, William Boimler, sorry, Bradford is our main character. William Boimler has joined Section 31. That'll be next season. And, but surprisingly did wrap up the Rutherford thing. And also get to see T'Lyn, although it's the very, very end. T'Lyn being the Vulcan character. I couldn't think of the name of her last week. Of course, her name is T'Lyn because, as I said before, all Vulcan women have a T apostrophe in their name. Why is that? I don't get that. But anyways, T'Lyn, that's her name. She comes in, so we're setting up for her to be a character in season 4, so that's fun. So I don't know. I think overall I come out feeling pretty good about this episode. It certainly is a more effective finale, I think, than the previous two finales. The first finale was fun. It had Riker in it, and it was really fun to see the Lower Decks version of Riker and all the jokes that were made around that about how he's going off to do these are the voyages thing, and he comes back quoting the Enterprise theme song. That cracked me up from that episode, but at the same time, kind of takes agency away from our main characters. That they need Riker to come in and save them, which also happened in the finale of Picard season 1, which had just recently aired earlier in that same year when that aired. Last year, I enjoyed the finale for the most part. I thought highly of it, but hated that they did a cliffhanger, and then retroactively, I hate the cliffhanger even more when I realized that the whole purpose of it was just to set up a gag that shows that our characters aren't important, and these other important characters like Tuvok and these high up people are doing important things, and that was the whole point of the cliffhanger. It wasn't actually a cliffhanger, and that was annoying. So retroactively, I take points away from the finale because I already didn't like that there was a cliffhanger. So I don't know if this is the best finale or not, because it's still, I'd have to go back and watch that season 1, but I think it's the most effective as a finale, as it kind of ties everything together, wraps everything up, does a lot of callbacks to previous episodes, which is really fun, and they did a really good job of it. So this is probably the best finale. It's definitely the most effective finale. Anyways, I've been rambling. Let me dive in a little bit to some of the details, and then I gotta get out of here. So I think I'm gonna quickly talk about the character beats that were wrapped up, and then I'll kind of get into what the actual plot of the episode was. So Mariner, we don't get much of her, but I think we get enough to have her realize that she just kind of wants to be back in Starfleet. And I like that they subverted the cliche of she suspected what's her face? I don't know her name. That archaeologist chick. She suspected her of being up to no good. Who is these mysterious people that are funding her? And it turned out it was Admiral Picard who was funding her. It's totally legit. And she realizes, well, I guess I just was hoping for an excuse to go back to Starfleet. Because I really miss it, and I think that tracks. I think that we've been building up to that all season long, so that totally works for me. I still have some misgivings about how finances work in the Star Trek universe. They even reiterated back in episode 6 that Starfleet doesn't use money. Then what money exactly is Picard using to fund this project if money is not a thing? It's so confusing, and it's not a knock on this episode. It's a knock on the Star Trek universe in general. That's just how they do it, and it just really I'll never understand how finances or lack of finances work in the Star Trek universe. But anyways, we also got Tendi doing science, and now she did drop a nugget in a previous episode that she realized she would like to be a captain, but I think that's on hold. That's for the future. I think it's possible for her to both want to be a captain and also just be a person of science at the heart of it, and we get a continuation of her kind of being the mentee of Dr. Bigleyaboo, and she's the one who kind of in a way makes them lose the race, but also kind of proves that you need people there, because although it turned out there wasn't sentient life there, you do have to stop and check. That part reminded me of the Next Generation first season episode, Home Soil. I think it was definitely a play off of that, which my brother pointed out in a video he did recently about episodes that rip off other episodes, that Home Soil actually rips off Devil in the Dark from the original series. However, this was definitely referring specifically to Home Soil, and that's what it made me think of. But it is something you gotta check, and Tindy did good. And I thought this was a nice little wrap up to her story for the season. And the captain thing, that will be ongoing. That'll continue. Now Rutherford, This I was not necessarily expecting. I wasn't expecting at all. In fact, last week I said I think they're definitely going to wait until next season, and I think I envisioned an entire episode dedicated to this, not that they would just kind of throw it in with another episode. So it was a little jarring at first. I wasn't sure how I felt about it, but as I process it, I'm feeling better and better about it because at the end of the day, it's lower decks. Like, I mean, they don't. What are they gonna do? They're gonna devote a whole episode to Rutherford. They already did devote a whole episode to Rutherford. Devote another whole episode to Rutherford. It's not gonna be anything mind blowing. So actually, this works, and I kind of like that it does tie in to the greater story, and it's not just this isolated thing. That it does tie in directly to what was happening to the Cerritos. So at the end of the day, I end up feeling good about this as well. I think this episode did accomplish a lot. Without it feeling, to me at least, without it feeling like they took on too much. So all of that actually really worked for me. Now let me talk about the actual plot of this episode. We find out that Admiral Buen Amigo, which in Spanish means good friend. This just occurred to me before I started recording. That's an ironic name since he's not such a good friend to the Cerritos, is he? But Admiral Buen Amigo is evil. I ain't gonna lie, I didn't predict that. I didn't see that one coming, even though it is very tropey. It wasn't super predictable, at least not for me. I didn't see it coming. And this does touch on a trope that has been used before, not only in Star Trek, but just in general. This whole idea of we're going to automate you, we're going to take your jobs away and give it to computers, but the computers turn out to be evil, so it's okay, you still have your jobs. It's very Ultimate Computer vibes from the original series, which I also referenced last week. I also said that it reminds me of the Ultimate Computer episode a little bit. But I do like that they were never trying to say that the Texas class is going to just take over all of Starfleet, because that would have been too much. Like, I would have been like, whoa, that's ridiculous. There's no way that would ever happen. But the fact that it is going to replace the lowly California class, the lower decks of Starfleet, I bought that. I definitely bought that. And the stakes felt real to me. That, hey, this is our jobs. I mean, of course, I know they've renewed season 4, and there's going to be a Cerritos, but the stakes felt real to me. Hey, we need to fight for our, our jobs and our crew, and us to be together on these California class ships. We need to fight for the California class, and I liked that a lot. And I liked how they're all, all of Billups and Dr. Dahana, they were all like, all right, everybody, let's get to work. And Tendi was having the conversation with her mentor, Dr. Brigleyaboo, in the sickbay, and Dr. Dahana goes, get the fuck out of my sickbay! So, that was good. I like that. I like that we're all coming together, we're going to get things done, which also they kind of did last season's finale as well. But I don't know, this felt more like, I don't know. This worked for me a little more. I think because it's not just the one ship, it's the California class in general. It's the lower decks of Starfleet all coming together. The other ones wouldn't come until the end, but you know what I mean. So they then they drop in a little references to other episodes. I mentioned home soil. They also go to a Meridian planet, which Meridian, I think, was number 2 or 3, or no, maybe it was number. I don't remember where it was on my list, but I did a top 10 least favorite Deep Space Nine episodes, and Meridian was on there somewhere. Actually, no, the romance in that was number 2 on my worst romance in Star Trek list. But the episode itself, I think, was like number 7 or 8 on my least favorite Deep Space Nine episodes. Anyway. Crappy episode, but interesting concept with the planet that kind of phases in and out of dimensions. I never had a problem with that concept. Is what they did with it that sucked. Um, this was probably one of the funnier scenes. As I said, it's not focused on comedy, but how the guy was like, "Oh, we're gonna see the ship." It was like, "You can't see the ship from here." And he's like, "Yeah, that I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the bringing in the Meridian concept, even if that episode sucked." Uh, so that was fun. And this is, I already referenced that we had the home soil thing, and that's why they end up losing. But they would have most likely convinced Starfleet, hey, we do need people here because of this. We never get a payoff on that because that's when it's revealed that Dr. Buenamigo was evil. And this is okay with me, that I don't really. I didn't really need to see her going to Starfleet and going, "Hey, guess what?" um, so we really do need people here because that would have been tropey. And then of course Buenamigo goes, "Hoo." I guess that was my first clue that he was evil when he was sitting there going, "Woo!" earlier in the episode. But Buenamigo also kind of tropey. He goes, "Well, you'll never get a chance because I'm going to kill you." But I actually like that the ship went, "I don't do what you say, father," or says something like that, and turns on him. And I like that instead of it being Buenamigo versus the Cerritos, I actually do like that it was the rogue Texas class just killing Buenamigo, which is pretty dark for Lower Decks. But they kill him and they go off on their own. And then Mariner, of course, comes in and saves the day. Now, is it realistic that she would go and get every single California class ship to come and help them? No, there's no way in hell that would happen, and I don't care. I don't care. Suspend disbelief for Lower Decks, whatever you want to call it. This was a fantastic scene. We got to see some crews from previous seasons. I vaguely remember some of them. The one that's fresher in my head is the one from earlier this season, the Carlsbad, I think it is. I noticed all those ships were named after cities in California, which I never put two and two together before. Is the Cerritos? That's a city in California? I guess I don't know my California geography very well. I didn't know Cerritos was a city in California, but all of the rest of them definitely were. And also the Texas class ships were like the Dallas, and they were Texas cities as well, which is a little silly, but it's Lower Decks. But so yeah, I thought this was a great moment with all the California class ships coming together. Then we get Mariner coming back on the ship, and still disappointed in the Mariner Jennifer thing. She just kind of brushes past her. I mean, at this point, it's almost like, just have Mariner move on to a different partner because that was a dud. I feel like I don't know. We'll see if they do anything with it in season 4 or not. At this point, I feel like is kind of just a disappointment, and they can just move on if they want to from that. Jennifer was really unfair to her in the last episode, and I don't think Mariner should go back to her, quite frankly. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. And then the episode ends, so I think. And then I watched another review that pointed out there's a post-credit scene. I never would have thought in a million years to check for a post-credit scene in Star Trek. This has to be the first post-credit scene in Star Trek history. I don't recall there ever being another one. Please tell me if I'm wrong about that. But it never crossed my mind to look for a post-credit scene. And it is setting up the return of Dun 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 Badgie. I know. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention that Rutherford tied in this AI technology that was used for the Texas class to the same technology he used for Badgie, which of course would be the first clue that these things are going to be evil, because Badgie was also evil. Okay, so I don't hate Badgie the way that my brother does. If you watch my brother Enchantment of Eternity, he really, really hates the Badgie character. I don't, but I also think it was a one-trick pony. Like, I think it was a one-episode thing, but they brought him back for a second episode, and I don't think this is a character that they need to bring back again. But I guess A lot of the other fans disagree with that assumption because a lot of fans want Badgie. I hear a lot of talk bring Badgie back, so I guess they're giving the fans what they want. I personally don't think we need Badgie again, but whatever. I'm not whatever. Not super worried about it. It might just be one episode that I'm not thrilled about next season. So we'll see what they do with that. So overall, I'm feeling pretty satisfied with this episode and satisfied with the season. I'm not ready yet to give my rating for the overall season. Perhaps I will do that on my live discussion that I'm going to do with my brother Mark from Enchantment of Eternity, who I just mentioned. We're going to do a live discussion on Saturday. I may give my overall rating of the season. Then I got to think about it a little bit. It's somewhere between an 8, 8.5, and 9. I gotta think about it. But I can give my overall rating for this episode, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. Now it's time to give my rating out of 10 for this episode, with 1 being the lowest possible score, 10 being the highest possible score. And this was a tough one, and it's a rating that it went up from my initial reaction after watching the episode, especially after talking through it more. It definitely went up a little bit, but it's also one that maybe will go down in the future as I process it even more. But for right now, this is the rating that I'm going with. I'm giving it a 9. I'm giving it a 9. It is not the typical Lower Decks episode. Wasn't focused on the comedy, but I think they did well with the character stories. I think they told a really engaging story about the Lower Decks of Starfleet, the California class. And it was a little tropey, but I think they avoided getting too tropey. And so I really enjoyed this one. I think it was, like I said, the most effective finale of the 3 that they've had so far. So I really enjoyed this one. And no stupid cliffhanger this time, unless you count the post-credit scene, which I don't. That's not really a cliffhanger. That's just a silly post-credit scene. So I really like this one. So my rating for this episode is a 9 out of 10. That does it for my review for Star Trek Lower Decks, and quite unfortunately, that does it for my reviews in general of Season 3 of Star Trek Lower Decks. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself next week. No House of Dragon. No Lower Decks. What am I going to... I got Star Wars Andor, I guess. I like the show. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking it. I think it is a bit overrated. It's not something I get excited for. I like it. I don't get excited for it the way that I get excited for House of the Dragon and Lower Decks, which is how it is. But I do have one last thing to do with Star Trek Lower Decks, something I just mentioned a little bit earlier. I am doing a live discussion with my brother Mark from Enchantment of Eternity. We will discuss the entirety of Season 1, or rather Season 3 of Star Trek Lower Decks. I was thinking House of Dragon again. So Star Trek 3 of Star Trek Lower Decks. We'll have a discussion on that. It'll be Saturday, October 29th. It'll be 9 o'clock p.m. for you on the East Coast of the United States, 6 o'clock p.m. for us here on the West Coast of the United States. The rest of you will be able to click on the link and see what your local time is. And I will put the link in the description below as soon as I have that link up and ready to go. If you are one of the first people to watch this review, the link won't be up there yet, but it will be there eventually. So keep checking back for that. It'll be on Saturday, October 29th, 6 p.m. West Coast, 9 p.m. East Coast. Another way to get notified that live discussion is happening is to subscribe and click the bell for notifications. All right, everybody, I will see you soon. Goodbye.